The first bit of news that we'll be covering today is Dead Space, and more so what EA Plays last week sort of showcase announced. So this is something that Eric is the other half of this duo usually. We're super excited about this game. Him and I both really enjoy Dead Space for any number of reasons, but most of which is what kind of brought to the survival horror genre and what it showcased as like storytelling in games. Originally, it was done by Visceral Studios, which it was another EA studio that I think was Californian based, but they were shut down a couple of years ago. So the original creators of Dead Space kind of aren't there. But EA confirmed that in fact Dead Space is coming, and for all the reasons that we love it, which you can check in video over here, that should be linked up. We talk about it in some depth about the design mechanics and the audio design that really made it stand out when it was originally released, and kind of how much it accomplished in like the second or third year of the PS3 generation. This is really an incredible game, and kind of like a sleeper. But we get announcement of finally EA reviving the Dead Space franchise finally. And it is actually headed up by a great team. It's going to be Motive Studios. Originally, it was formed by Jade Raymond, I don't know, a couple of years ago. And they were originally like earmarked to head up the Star Wars development of a couple of new Star Wars IPs that were going to be new. Not Fallen Order, but Squadrons. Yeah, Star Wars Squadrons was the last game that they produced. They're a pretty solid studio. Jade Raymond's no longer with them, but they are Montreal based. They do have a pretty good pedigree, and they are an EA studio. This is going to be the first game that they tackle that's going to kind of step outside of Battlefront style game and bring it into like, full on narrative based game. And a couple other things that we know about the Dead Space game is that it will be a remake. The creative director had sort of spoken on behalf of, I guess, EA, but how they looked at stuff that had existed in that was on the cutting room floor for the original Dead Space, and they can kind of discern that by looking at in the game development stuff. Like you can find hallways that have probably been blocked off and were never used, or parts of the levels that weren't ever exposed to the gamers. But as having access to the source code, the developers can look at all like the models and everything else, and they can kind of see what was cut out of the game and never utilized because time restraints. So they're looking at reviving a bunch of that stuff, which is really awesome. It's also going to be next gen only, which is actually great to hear. As much as there are PS4 and Xbox One owners, a next gen only game means that it will utilize the utmost of the technology that's available to them. So expect some haptic usage, 3D audio, which will be really great, and at the very least, a cutting edge graphics, which I'm excited for, especially in like creepy corridor spaces. Ray trace lighting will be amazing in there because you don't have to focus on reflections. What you focus on is lighting, flashlights, that sort of stuff. So it should be like a really awesome showcase of next gen whenever it comes out. It is going to be using a brand new engine. It's, well, not a brand new engine. It's using the Frostbite engine, but it's a different engine than the original game was built on. So you can expect that they are going to be building it entirely from the ground up, probably just using like the skeleton of models and whatever else used before it. But the gameplay and all the mechanics are probably going to have to be rebuilt. No release date yet. And given the fact, the way EA's sort of presented the teaser, which used game models and possibly even like targeted rendering approach to how they do it on next gen. Basically, we got no gameplay. We got nothing running on a console. We have just like the earliest pre-render. So I would guess it's probably around alpha development at best, which means they're more than a year away from releasing. So we have something to look forward to. Unfortunately, we just don't have Dead Space, tomorrow or whatever. Go back and play the first one. It's an amazing game. Actually, and so is the second one. The second one's a really great game too. So if you're hankering for some Dead Space, I'd go back and check out those games.